Mixed martial arts. No one else talks about it. Except us. On the ball.
Dublin City FM.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Mixed Martial Arts segment here, courtesy of the On The Ball Sports Show. And Kenny is away this week, so I'm joined by the veteran voice of said show, because we will be talking a lot of Irish content. Conor McGregor fought last night in the MGM Grand as part of UFC 178. And Declan, you've a lot of questions to ask about Conor McGregor moving forward.
Yeah, Conor obviously has been the star of Irish UFC and MMA for the last number of years. He talks a good game and he delivers in the ring.
Yes.
And last night's been a very, very significant step forward in his career. And you were telling me off air that the fact that he won last night means that he's going to have a shot at a title.
Yeah, and just going through the fight and leading up to basically what we had all hoped to be a potential title opportunity if he was victorious. Dustin Poirier basically said before the fight, because of talking a game, something you also alluded to earlier, that he had never stepped into the octagon with somebody he disliked more. This could have definitely been the catalyst to Conor's victory, not taking away from his skill, but you can't deny Dustin Poirier's skill. People on the lead up to this fight were pretty adamant that, you know, Conor could definitely suffer his first loss in the UFC. It was by far the highest ranked fighter he'd ever fought, the closest to world class he had ever fought, and Conor really played the game perfectly. This also leads into the title shot opportunity. He beat Poirier by TKO punches in 146 of the first round. There was slight controversy, Declan, in the sense that obviously no shots to the back of the head in any way are allowed. And Conor went in for an overhand left, and basically Dustin kind of ducked, and it ended up just clipping his ear, and that was enough to send him down. Now the rules state that if it's an intentional shot, then we're in trouble. However, if somebody, and you see this a lot with high leg kicks, if somebody basically is moving or is trying to block, and their movement causes the other person to hit them in the back of the head, that's just fair game, because obviously it's the amount of movement is constant in MMA.
Yeah.
Because you know you could get an attack from any limb, anything could happen. So anybody who thinks that this might be somewhat of a tainted or dubious victory, they have to understand that this happens all the time. It just so happened in this fight that it led to the finish rather than just a kind of a footnote. So after,
there's a possibility if he'd moved a different way, he wouldn't have been hit in the ear, for example.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, no doubt. So coming out of it, Conor McGregor was interviewed by Joe Rogan, as always, in the post-fight. Actually, just taking a step back before that, as soon as it happened, he started making the, I guess, universal symbol for money.
Yeah.
And this all led to something that came to fruition, which was the performance of the night bonus, which he got on top of his win bonus, $50,000 split between him and Dominic Cruz, who also won on his return after a few years out in the main event of the preliminary card. So Conor McGregor knew that. Then he also started gesturing for the title shot. So Mendes and Aldo is set to take place for the featherweight championship in a little while down the line. And in the press conference afterward, it was somewhat heavily alluded to that the winner of that fight, the champion coming out of the fight, will be facing Conor McGregor. Now, whether they go with just a Las Vegas show, whether Aldo wins and they decide to do it in Brazil, or whether the rumours of the football stadium, they keep referring to it in American media as the football stadium, we know it more affectionately of Lansdowne Road or the Aviva, that is yet to be seen. Dana White has always been very reticent to do outdoor shows just because of the fact that, you know, the elements, especially over here. If we were to get a summer like the one just passed, we could be all right, depending on when they want to do it. But I said to you off the air, I would give it an 80% chance that Conor might be rocketed up to the title match, depending on who wins between Mendes and Aldo.
And who would you fancy between those two, Mendes and Aldo, given their track records, given any previous encounters there may have been?
Okay, well, basically the story going into that fight is Jose Aldo has been very much a kind of a benchmark in the division. Conor McGregor made a point of, I guess, keeping up with his stereotype of somebody who has maybe a big mouth, one might say. He kind of blasted everybody in the division. after everybody ranked higher than him in the division after the or during the press conference. All I guess with the kind of the safety of no matter who he fights next, they've got video footage of the first shot fired. But when talking about Aldo, he wasn't scathing in any way. His critique was that Aldo has plateaued. That he's been incredibly dominant, but he's plateaued. And this isn't hyperbole. Like, a lot of insiders, a lot of analysts will say that he has in fact plateaued. But you can't take away from what he's done. And you also can't take away from something that's very, very important. And we see it a lot when people go into title matches in mixed martial arts being undefeated, or maybe just even undefeated in the UFC. For instance, Conor has a couple of losses on his record from very early on, but he's coming into this on an 11-fight streak. You know, he'll be going into title match on a 12-fight streak. Jose Aldo has the experience being in the octagon, not only winning a championship, but defending a championship successfully. So it's just one of those things with Conor, because the Irish mixed martial arts elite have not been tested at the top level. Whether it's Aldo or whether it is just a higher ranked fighter and they hold off on the title shot, every fight that Conor McGregor has if he wins the championship is always going to be a step up in competition, and you have to be aware of that. You know, Aldo as well is somebody I would not perceive to be affected by mind games perhaps as much as Poirier was last night. So it will be nothing short of an incredibly tough fight for McGregor. But what it would do for him as a mixed martial artist and the way that he's perceived in the public, to even just have a title fight, win or lose, his mouth is so good that if he lost that fight deck, he could stay around that picture almost as long as he wanted, you know? And
he has made an impression outside the ring because of his mouth to one better thing. But it in a way, it's probably gained him the notoriety necessary to kind of put himself in the shop window for a lot of these fights.
Absolutely. And, you know, people, MMA purists, maybe they like to call themselves, people who are very much on board the fighting game because of mixed martial arts, perhaps ignore what came before it. And obviously I'm referring to maybe professional boxing as the most popular worldwide sport, where the selling of the fight when it comes to the general populace rather than the insiders isn't skill, it's character building. It's personality.
Muhammad Ali was a classic example of that in professional boxing in the heavyweight ranks in the 60s, 70s and early 80s. I mean, his marketing of the bout probably attracted a lot of non-boxing fans to watch those on TV, and McGregor is doing the same kind of thing in a UFC context.
Yeah, and that's what's expected, I think, of people within the mixed martial art. A lot of criticism, and myself and Ken have talked about this on the show a lot, is that after the fight, basically the winner is always interviewed by Joe Rogan, who's the coloured commentator. He gets into the cage and he does a little post-fight with them. And the question that's usually put to the fighters is, what do you want to do next? It's a leading question. They want a name. They want the fighter to express desire to win the championship. And a lot of fighters will be very humble because although the sport itself is as knockdown, drag out and physical, the physicality of this sport is, you know, it's unparalleled in professional sports. In terms of sportsmanship, the way they treat each other between rounds, the fact they always switch gloves before the start of every single round, majority of the time, and the affection that's shown between fighters afterwards, that mentality in mixed martial arts has caused a lot of fighters to be humble even in this regard. The one platform they're given to kind of say, okay, get us excited about what you're doing next. They will always say, well, you know, it's all about going back to the drawing board. I'm going to train as hard as I've trained before, and whatever the UFC has for me, you know, I'll be there and I'll be better than before. You know, it's this stock answer that's given, unlike people like Conor McGregor. Chael Sonnen is the biggest example. You obviously referenced Muhammad Ali, who's the overall benchmark, but Chael Sonnen is the biggest example of somebody who got into several title main events, not because he's tremendously skilled, he was an elite fighter, but he was never a championship level fighter. He was just an incredible talker. He was a salesman. He was a character. Mm-hmm. He was somebody who got you emotionally invested, whether you wanted to see him win because of what he'd say or whether you wanted to see him beat, more importantly, because of what he said. So this is where McGregor's at. Obviously, it's very hard to kind of gauge over here any kind of backlash to perhaps him being put into the title picture, I guess prematurely might be the word, but certainly in the States there's a few people who are raising eyebrows. You have to realise though, UFC is not it's not a commission, it's a business. Okay, we've got the Nevada and Jersey and all the other athletic commissions that sanction the fight, make the rules, and they're the people that look after the sports end of it. UFC is a business, and the idea is that they want to put on the best fights between the best people who the audience are interested in seeing. Conor McGregor is a godsend. Not only does he have these attributes, he's also a international star, and because the UFC is touring so much, you know that they would want nothing more than to have a star in every single territory. So more on this as it develops, but we're hoping to get an announcement of Conor McGregor in the title picture very, very soon.
And of course, because of Conor's success, there's opportunities opening up for other Irish fighters in this genre that mightn't have had any attention paid to them whatsoever if it weren't for Conor McGregor.
Yeah, they've signed a lot of Irish fighters. The majority of them are doing very, very well, but they have an extra caveat on them because when they come out, people who mightn't recognise them know they're Irish, and the relationship and the association with Conor McGregor is helping them. He is leading a team of troops right now who are trying to take over the UFC, flying the flag of Ireland.
And given the tradition we have always had in amateur boxing, for example, that's always a good foundation on which to build careers that incorporate all those skills into the sport. Yeah,
and a tremendous amount of up-and-coming Irish fighters, and I guess more importantly, in a way, Irish coaches, is that background. They came from there, and it was a natural progression to get into mixed martial arts. Okay, so I believe we're out of time. Join us again next week. Ken will be, I don't know if Ken will be back, but either way, we might have more reports on Conor McGregor, and we'll be talking all the latest news and reports in mixed martial arts.
On the ball.
Dublin City FM.